We have tons of NHL news to talk about here today, including some trade talk around the Montreal Canadiens. Is Jake Allen the goalie that's going to get moved? Could he possibly even end up on waivers? We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, we also have some trade talk around the Detroit Red Wings that actually are connected to the Montreal Canadiens. We have several other items to take a look at, including an update on Shane Pinto getting back with the Ottawa Senators. We have an update on a potential grievance involving the Corey Perry contract termination. We have news from the waiver wire. We have some recalls on injury updates, another investigation including General Manager Bill Guerin of the Minnesota Wild, plus another investigation separately into a medical situation that happened between Dallas and Arizona in the Dallas area, which really could be violating some medical protocols. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a ton of stuff to cover here today. Lots of some really odd, interesting news. Before we jump into that, let's get into some of the more easier, quick items here, including news from the waiver wire. The Pittsburgh Penguins today placed forward Vinny Hinostroza on waivers. We've seen a kind of a revolving door amongst the Pittsburgh Penguin bottom six as they continue to look for the right mix. Some players going up and down over the last number of a week or two here. Hinostroza is the latest. He was back up. Now he's back on waivers to go back down. We saw some crazy games in the NHL last night, including a ridiculous game between the Maple Leafs and the Blue Jackets. It felt like it was, I guess, more than one game. It was like separate games completely. Like the first two periods, the Maple Leafs were playing horrible, probably their worst two periods of the season, and the Jackets had a commanding 5-0 lead. But then in the third period, the Maple Leafs decided, we got to make a game of this and we need to come back, and they know they have lots of offensive power, and they came all the way back and tied it 5-5, followed by the Jackets and Ken Johnson winning it in overtime. So it's the first time we've ever seen a 5-goal lead blown, but they actually managed to win the game. So the Blue Jackets actually, amongst their crazy letdown, actually made history. So that was pretty crazy. And we also saw another scenario last night between Tampa and Edmonton. Andrei Vasilevskiy stole that game and allowed the Lightning to beat the Oilers. Vasilevskiy was awesome. Stuart Skinner was not. Vasilevskiy faced 57 shots. That's how good the Oilers' offense was. But it goes to show you that sometimes if your defense and your goaltending isn't up to par and you let in some soft ones, it doesn't matter how good you are, you run into a hot goalie, you're going to have a chance to lose. And Vasilevskiy absolutely stole that game for Tampa. I mean, their offense was clicking at a good rate as well. It's not like I want to take anything away from their play last night and their abilities, but Vasi was showing that he can be the best goalie in the world still. Like, he's had some off nights since he's returned from his surgery, but he's also had some nights like last night where he was just amazing too. Steven Stamkos had a 4-goal game, including the final empty net goal to seal the deal for the Lightning. And that's actually amazingly the first time in his career that he's had a 4-goal game. I was quite surprised to hear that stat, seeing as he's got well over 500 goals in his career. He's had several 40, 50, 60 goal seasons, especially when he was in his earlier years. He's had, I think, 12 hat tricks, but first time he's ever hit 4 goals in a game. So good on him for accomplishing that, and some crazy NHL action last night. Speaking of NHL action and I guess a streak of a different kind, Alexander Ovechkin, for the first time in his career, has not scored a goal now in 11 straight NHL games. That's the longest of his NHL career. Some people are starting to ask the question, is Ovechkin's chase for Gretzky's record going to fall short now? It's not only is he on pace for the worst season of his career, he's on pace. He may not even score 20 goals this year if things don't turn around for him. And not only that, but in the Capitals games I've watched this year, he hasn't been all that noticeable. Like, you can tell that when you do watch him, when you do see him, his skating seems to be down a bit. Like, the decline, I think, after all this bigger sample size, appears to be real. We've never really seen a decline in Ovechkin's game. Yes, he had 1 year when he hit like 30 goals, and that was a bad year for him. That was because of a different way he was trying to play. That was more coaching based than it was anything else. But he bounced right back after and got back to his 40, 50 goal seasons, continuing on after that. But like for the first time, we've seen real decline. He's not getting the chances. He doesn't look to be skating as well. There's real doubt now if he'll hit Gretzky's record. Now, he still has time. If he can get things turned around, he still has enough time on his contract that if he can pick it up a bit, it's still very much possible. But if things don't get better and he goes at this pace the rest of the way, then it's not going to be. So it's going to be a really interesting storyline to follow here throughout the rest of this year going into the remaining part of his contract. Former Ranger defenseman Libor Hajek has signed in the Czech Republic. He's going to play in Czechia, and he signed through 2028. So I don't think he has any intentions of making an NHL comeback. Some other news regarding roster moves. Patrik Laine is officially on IR and actually would be eligible for LTIR. In last night's game against the Leafs, he scored a goal early, but then ended up getting hurt. He has a fractured clavicle, and he's going to be out for about 6 weeks. So that's bad news. It gets worse for Columbus after everything they've been through this year. The Ducks are going to be without Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras, and Jamie Drysdale all remain out. We also saw last night the St. Louis Blues fans booing Jordan Kyrou every time he touched a puck. Of course, yesterday before the game, it was the first time the players talked to the media after the coaching change and the dismissal of Craig Berube. And Kyrou was asked about his relationship with Berube, and he just said, no comment, he's not my coach anymore. And well, let's just say the fans didn't take very well to that. Of course, Berube helped deliver a Stanley Cup to St. Louis and very well respect it and will be revered in that city for forever probably. Blues fans will always be appreciative of what he was able to help the team accomplish. And in Kyrou's defense, he's had some frustrating times with the coach near the end of the tenure. And, he could have said something much worse, but he also could have maybe chose to take the high road and just say something a little bit different, not to stir things up either. I don't know. Either way, he was booed heavily, and then post-game, he was asked about it, and he was extremely emotional, brought to tears about the idea and listening to all the boos all night. I just hope for their sake that, because Kyrou played pretty good last night, and I think the new coach will allow him to kind of get back to his style of play. Honestly, I think what was being asked of him by Berube is probably just as much of a reason for his play not being quite where he'd like it to be. I just hope that there can be a situation where things get better between him and the fan base, because I don't really know that it's fair for the judgment. I understand they don't like the comments, but at the same time, it's I guess I kind of understand. Sometimes you understand stuff, but maybe would recommend choosing your words differently. Anyway, I hope things get better for him. In St. Louis, the Seattle Kraken have recalled Shane Wright. He'll have another opportunity to get some NHL action. Hopefully they give him a top six role where he can be more offensive. They had to place Jaden Schwartz on LTIR, brought up Wright, and they assigned Ty Cartier to the minors. They were all very much cap-related moves as well, but it's also to give Wright an opportunity. He's played very well in the American Hockey League and deserves a chance to come up and see what he can do. We also saw last night in that Columbus-Toronto game, not only Laine get hurt, but Maple Leafs forward Laine Reaves got hurt, and he's going to miss significant time as well. I'm not sure, he caught like a rut or something in the ice. He went into the boards awkwardly, completely on his own. Ended up needing to be helped off the ice, and when the cameras were panning to him going through, once he went through the door off the ice, the trainers were helping him, and then it looks like there must be a set of stairs that they have to go down, and it looked like he fell down the stairs. So I don't really know if they've confirmed that or not, but based on the camera shots that they had of him, it looked like he was already in pain from what's likely, I'm assuming, probably an ankle injury. Maybe a knee, but most likely an ankle. Could be a high ankle sprain, something along that lines. Hard to say, but couldn't put a lot of pressure on it, needed help, and then it looks like he fell down the stairs. So that's just kind of crazy. Something you don't really see very much, and I hope he's okay. We don't have a timeline really for his return, but just that it's going to be significant. So we're probably looking at, I would guess, at least 4 to 6 weeks, but it could be more. It just really, we haven't had more of an update from the team just yet. We also saw today that the Red Wings have demoted Zach Aston-Reese and Jonathan Berggren back to the minors, which indicates that JT Compher and Klim Kostin are going to be able to return to the lineup. Of course, Berggren's been embroiled in trade rumors. We're going to talk about him a little bit further. So I'm sure the fact that he's been demoted again hasn't quite sat very well with him. He did well in his appearances, though, during the opportunity to be called up. Bruce Boudreau is back to coaching again. He's got another gig. This time he's been named the Team Canada head coach for the Spengler Cup. That'll take place over in Europe. So Bruce Boudreau will have a chance to go over there with Team Canada to see what he can do. I don't think he'll ever want to completely give up coaching. I think if an NHL team wanted to hire him, I think he'd be very interested. So we'll see what Bruce can do. He's one of those guys in the world of hockey you can't help but cheer for and can't help but like. So I hope he does well and enjoys the opportunity. As we talked yesterday as well, but the Minnesota Wild parting ways with one of their assistant GMs and main contract negotiator, and it is under mysterious circumstances. The team wouldn't comment on anything to do with why, just that they mutually agreed to part ways. And then we found out that there was some investigations going on. And after I recorded yesterday's video, later last night, there was more details out from Michael Russo, the Athletic, who covers the Wild, and it was able to confirm that General Manager Bill Guerin was also included and was being investigated as well. Apparently, there was some HR complaints about workplace, I guess you could call it workplace verbal abuse is what it sounded like. And right now, at this point, the Minnesota Wild received the investigation results from the outside third-party law firm that they hired. And it seems like from what we know, Bill Guerin has been, I guess, cleared of any fireable offenses. It's not clear if he's been reprimanded for anything else. I don't know if there was anything that was found in the investigation to confirm that he did anything like that was not good. I don't know. All we know is that he's not going to be losing his job, or at least it doesn't appear that way as of right now, because based on the article that we got, I don't know if it was completely clear if the investigations are all 100% wrapped up. I wasn't quite 100% sure the way things were worded there. So, but interesting to note about the reasons as to why. So, that's not a good look. That's bad news for Minnesota. It's already been through a lot this year, and to lose an AGM, which it's not necessarily connected to the exact same thing. There's multiple, I guess, things going on behind the scenes in Minnesota that we didn't know about. It's not necessarily because the AGM was let go. It doesn't mean that it's workplace like a verbal abuse as well. Like that wasn't confirmed. We don't know. So like it looks like I said, all we knew is that several members of the Minnesota Wild management team were being investigated by a third party. So I assume that HR through ownership would have had to make those arrangements based on complaints received from other employees. So I don't know if we'll learn anything more about that or not. Corey Perry, we haven't heard the last of this just yet. Elliot Friedman's reporting that it's not clear yet because he has lots of time, but Corey Perry has not made any kind of statements, or there's been nothing official as far as grieving the fact that his contract with the Chicago Blackhawks was terminated. Based on his statement, it sounds like he admitted some things he did wrong, obviously very apologetic, seeking help now to kind of, I guess make himself deal with those issues and to improve and to get better with some of the things he was struggling with, because he admitted to having issues with alcohol in that sense. But it's not clear, even if Perry does not want to grieve it, I guess it's possible, according to Elliott, that the NHLPA may grieve it anyway. And more than anything else, it's to set precedent for future in case this type of scenario comes up again. Essentially, as the union, they want to make sure that players are not being terminated for reasons that are not justified. And in this case, I think we've talked about it enough before to kind of understand that because it was Chicago and because of everything that's gone on with that organization before and the whole abuse cover-up with Kyle Beach, they were probably a lot less tolerant of any kind of behavior that was inappropriate. Now, because there was issues there with, like I mentioned before, like based on what Corey Perry had to say and what we learned in the situation, I kind of wondered, well, instead of terminating him, why didn't they kind of force him to seek help and get him into the NHL Players Assistance Program through the PA? Like that would have made more sense to me. He still would have been away from the team for an extended period of time and wouldn't have been allowed back until the program released him, confirming that he's gone through the rehab process. So, but obviously, even if Corey Perry doesn't want to, but the PA thinks they have a case, they're probably going to grieve it just so that they can protect other players in the future. So don't be shocked if that's grieved. Shane Pinto's name has come up again. Elliotte Friedman's reporting that, of course, and others as well, that Shane Pinto will be technically allowed to rejoin the Senators 10 days prior to the end of his suspension. He'd be eligible to come back January 21st. So January 11th would be when he's allowed to officially practice with the team. There's some reporting, and I can't confirm it 100%, but that he's actually back in Ottawa now and privately training with a skating coach that was recommended to him by Claude Giroux, as well as doing some stuff with Daniel Alfredson at one of the Senators' facilities. Now, of course, that's not officially NHL practice time. I don't think there's any issues there. I don't even know 100% that that's legit. I've seen some reports on Twitter from locals, but I don't know if they have 100% proof of that. Either way, at the very least, he's definitely training, getting ready for his return. The belief is he's going to sign a contract just for the remainder of this season. His qualifying offer would be expired now, but the contract he signs will likely be very similar, if not the same amount, is what's expected. Elliotte Friedman said they could surprise us and come up with a multi-year deal, but the belief is, especially based on cap space, that that's likely not going to be the case. It would be a lot easier to sign him to a cheap contract for the rest of this year, and then they'll have a few UFAs that they may not bring back next year, and they'll have a better idea where things stand, where he's at with his development, to do a new contract in the offseason for hopefully multiple years at that point. So we'll see, but Shane Pinto getting closer to his return. I know I've seen reports from Bruce Garriock on one of the recent Sens broadcasts saying that he expected him to have to go down to Belleville and play a while, considering how long it's been, but I'm like, I don't really see that. I could see maybe going for a game or two just on a conditioning stint, but he is eligible to go down without needing waivers, so they could do it, but I don't know. To me, Bruce was making him sound a lot worse than what it was. So I don't know. We'll see. And another investigation is going on as well. There's so many investigations lately, but saw a report today from dailyfaceoff.com and Frank Saravelli talking about the fact that the NHL and the NHLPA are opening a joint investigation to see if there was a gap in protocols after Coyotes defenseman Juuso Valimaki was in Dallas. This was back last month, about almost exactly a month ago. The Coyotes were visiting the Dallas Stars for a game, and he got a puck to the face, and there was a lot of damage between his teeth and the inside of his mouth, like there was in jaw, it was bad. So he saw team doctors off the ice after getting to the dressing room. And, of course, when teams travel, they don't have their own medical. They rely on the home team's medical. So the medical there was basically that you're going to need surgery, so you need to go to the hospital. So he was transported from the arena to a Dallas hospital via ambulance, which is normal. His wife was actually with him on the trip, so she was able to escort him to the hospital, as well as I'm not sure who, but a representative from the Arizona Coyotes went with them as well. And apparently he was left lingering at the Dallas hospital for several hours without care. And apparently after getting there, they told him essentially that he needed surgery and it was going to be probably 2 days before he could have it, and that there was too many more urgent cases ahead of him, that he needed to get a hotel for the night and come back the next day. And this guy's got he's got problems with his jaw. He can't even really function properly. All kinds of blood in his mouth. He's an absolute mess. And of course, thankfully, they didn't listen and they stuck around. And after 4 or 5 hours, his wife was able to get through to somebody with the NHLPA, and then the NHLPA was able to intervene and actually ended up able to help him get care. And the doctors told him after he got care that it's a good thing you didn't listen, because you could have asphyxiated on your own blood. There's that much going in there, and that, if he asphyxiated like that, he could have died. It could have been a real bad situation. So it's hard to say right now. It's not clear if any medical protocols were violated or what have you. But yeah, it was a real bad situation, and they're looking into it to see where things went wrong, to see if there's anything that can be done or what happened exactly. So we'll see what we learn about that in the future. That's certainly scary, as teams hopefully don't run into this in other areas, but That's where things stand. In Detroit, more rumors around the potential trade of Jonathan Berggren, but we learned a little bit more about where they're coming from. It's actually more of a case of the player wanting more opportunity. I know I've seen NHL reporters stop short of saying that he requested a trade. It's not necessarily at that point, but it's known amongst the organization that he wants more of an opportunity and wasn't thrilled with not making the roster at a training camp and putting in more time in the American League when he felt that he didn't need to do that, that he was ready to stay in the NHL. So there's kind of some mixed opinions out there. Some kind of feel like a trade is likely, and obviously some feel like Detroit's trying to see what they can get for opportunity within the roster. But then they just added Patrick Kane as well. So they brought in a lot of veterans. As much as they have a lot of good-looking prospects, the team got old real fast. They're not an old team, but they added a lot of older players amongst this rebuild in the last couple of years between DeBrincat and Kane and Compher and Andrew Kopp and David Perron. They've all come in the past 2 years, and it's kind of boxed out some of these other players. So he does want more opportunity, and that's where he gets linked to the Montreal Canadiens as being one of the main teams that have been interested in acquiring his services. So we'll see what happens, but now we know a little bit more about why that rumor keeps popping up and where it's coming from, because it's from the player not being happy. So we'll see what that leads to. I mean, Detroit has the ability to not necessarily fulfill that request, so we'll see what they do. And Montreal is going to be a busy team ahead of the deadline. Certainly, there's lots of talk about Jake Allen being the goalie to move. More talk again on TVA Sports. Tony Marinaro was on there talking to some of their analysts, and essentially they were talking about the fact that they all seem pretty convinced that Jake Allen is the guy that needs to go in the 3-goalie rotation, that Montembeault and Primo need to stay. Montembeault's got the 3-year deal. Primo's still young. Allen hasn't been as good in his last number of starts, but he's also had no opportunity to get any kind of rhythm going. It's certainly been a case of, playing sporadically, which is not good for any goalie, really, to be honest. And that they even suggested that if they can't trade him, that they should put him on waivers, which I found absurd. Would they really try to embarrass him that way and treat him that way after giving him an extension a couple of years back? I would hope not. I mean, Jake's been there for a while. And it's not like the new regime that's there with Hughes and Gorton, even signed him to stay longer. So I would hope they wouldn't pull that kind of stunt. But, at the end of the day, the Seattle Kraken are a team that continuously gets linked to him. Goaltender Philip Grubauer is now going to be out for an extended period of time. They're not thrilled with Dreger and Joey Decord, the inconsistent goaltending amongst those two. They're not the only team. He's been linked to the Oilers as well. Of course, there's other teams popping up with goaltending needs. Carolina comes to mind, possibly the Devils. So we'll see. But Seattle's the team that's getting most of the airplay right now, and the talk of the rumor mill about having interest in Jake Allen. So we'll see. I mean, obviously some other names in Montreal you need to watch in the next little while here. Sean Monahan, Christian Dvorak, David Savard, all expected to draw lots of trade interest, especially Monahan, probably one of the better valued contracts that could be a great 3C on a contending team. Dvorak, not expected to have a long future in Montreal, but of course that's going to depend on his play. David Savard still has a little bit, he's not in the final year of his contract, where it's not the final year. He may not go, but being a right shot defenseman that's a veteran with a Stanley Cup to his name, he's definitely getting interest, and there's no clear-cut answer to say for sure if he's going to get dealt, but the possibility sure does exist that he's going to get a lot of attention. It's going to depend on the asking price as well, and the Habs do have a lot of youth that they're trying to find room for in that blue line as well, but you do need to have a little bit of experience back there at the same time. So we'll see. But between these 3 or 4 players, expect a lot of activity in Montreal in the coming weeks. Of course, likely once we get into January is when I expect things to kind of pick up a little bit on the trade front. But let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.